the Buddhist Missionary University, Yangon, Myanmar, from 2006 to present, visiting professor at Mahajula Raja Vidyalaya University, 2007 to present, visiting lecturer at the Margate Buddhist College, Hungary, 2015 to present, and rector Ocean State Buddhist University, 2016 to present. In addition to these academic activities, the Venerable founded the Oxford Buddha Vihara in Oxford, UK in 2003, and it now has branches in Myanmar, Singapore, Malaysia, Serbia, and Hungary. He has been teaching and conducting Buddhist meditation retreats in a number of countries, including Thailand, Singapore, India, Sri Lanka, Spain, Hungary, Serbia, UK, and UAE. He is the author of Mindfulness Meditation Make Easy, 1999, The Dhamma Make Easy, 1999, Different Aspects of Mindfulness, 2000, Emotional Health, 2016. He has been conferred national level religious titles by the government of the Republic of the Union of Myanmar, such as Eka Mahasattama Jodika Taja for his outstanding missionary work, Eka Maha Ganthavasaka Pandita for his excellence in teaching, and Dhamma Kathika Bahujana Hidatara for delivering the Dhamma to benefit the many. Now may I invite Dr. Metu Nyatandahao to read the CV of another chairperson. Thank you.
I would like to introduce about the biography of Seyaji Utomya. Seyaji Utomya is a member advisory board on Rakhine and former assistant secretary general and security coordinator for the United Nations. He was born in September 1942 in Pyeong Luen, Myanmar. Seyaji Dr. Tola was born of parents Uaung Tu and Toput in the Biebin village, Jezajo Township in Magui region on 25 November 1939. His schooling for elementary education or reading and writing began at the age of 5 and Uyezada, the abode of Genzo Tai. Then he joined village primary school up to completion of his primary education. After that, he went to Bakoku in 1954-55 and studied at number 2 State High School from which he was matriculated in 1959. He continued his study at Mandalay University and was graduated in 1963, taking Myanmar language and literature, history and geography. Soon after his graduation, he was appointed tutor in History Department of the Intermediate College of Myitkyina, Kachin State. He got MA degree from Mandalay Arts and Science University in 1970 and was promoted to assistant lecturer in 1972. In 1977, he was transferred to the Institute of Education, Yangon, where he undertook research works on rural economy and rural life. In 1983, he went to USA to pursue further study for his PhD in history and the Fulbright Foundation program. Since his return home, he was promoted to lecturer, associate professor, professor in universities of Magui, Mongyuan and Mandalay, and deputy director general in the University Historical Research Center. He has so far published 25 books on Myanmar history and culture, of which 2 got National Literacy Awards. He was also a recipient of the Thorn Foundation Literary Awards 2 times, Dr. Teng Shui Foundation Literary Awards and Pakoku Uongpe Library Awards. He is now Vice Chairman too of the Myanmar Historical Commission and of the Ministry of Religious Affairs and Culture.
Before we start the paper presenting session, may I inform the audience that after the speaker has presented, the Most Venerable Oxford Sayadaw, Venerable Dr. Khamai Thammasami, will explain briefly in Myanmar language. May I now cordially invite the chairpersons and hand over the floor. Now the floor is yours, Venerable Sir and Sir. Thank you.
Venerable Sirs and Rector of Yangon University, Sayadaw Phokau, and Regional Minister U Nai Lin, distinguished scholars, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second day of our conference. Today we have three speakers. The first is Dr. Alex Ruiz Falquez, who is originally from Spain and now is head of Department of Pali and Languages at Centenary Buddhist University. He has his PhD in Pali from Cambridge University, and he specializes in Pali texts written in Myanmar. Without further ado, I'd like to invite Dr. Alex Ruiz Falquez to present his paper, which is on Mukamattasara, an unpublished Pali text from Myanmar from the Bagan period.
Venerable members of the Sangha and distinguished guests, very good afternoon, everyone. So my paper, as the title indicates, is the Mukamattasara, a forgotten treasure of Pagan. And this will be the contents. The first part is Pali grammar and philology in Pagan, the importance of the Burmese Pali tradition and grammar and the earliest Burmese science. The second part is forgotten treasure, the Mukamattasara and its recovery, manuscript sources, features of the Mukamattasara, lost literature on the Mukamattasara, and then the third part is more general and general reflection, grammar beyond words. That's what's grammar exactly. So what is Pali grammar and why is Pali grammar important? And finally, I will end with a few concluding points. So we start from the beginning. Pali grammar and philology in Pagan. This text is from a very well-known Pali scholar called Oscar von Hinüber, who has written extensively on Pali philology. It says, ever since King Chansita took the pains to collect and purify the Tipitaka, which had become obscured and corrupt, a highly sophisticated Pali philology developed in Burma during the following centuries, which has left traces in almost every text. This vigorous, rigorous, and bold scholarship never shrank back from introducing sometimes quite considerable alterations in the wording, even of the Tipitaka. Therefore, anybody studying Pali, whether working on manuscripts, grammar, or literary history, has to acquaint himself with the ways and means by which Pali was molded in Burma. This can be neither understood nor evaluated without a thorough knowledge of the Sattaniti, their very foundation, and in many respects, their culmination too. So this is the point of view of a scholar of philology, a linguist, someone interested in recovering the old Pali, the Pali, the Magadhi, the dialect from northern India. But what I will argue this afternoon is that there are a few more aspects that are important in Pali grammar, especially the Pali grammatical tradition of Myanmar. So one is, of course, philology. Philology means literally the love of words, loving words, but what it actually means is the study of text, including oral text. And originally this concept comes from the school of philologists and librarians actually in Alexandria in Egypt. So one thing is philology, the other thing is philosophy. We also find philosophy in the grammatical text. Although we say tada or grammar, they also include a great deal of philosophy. And philosophy, as we said yesterday, is the love of wisdom. But basically what it means is the study of ideas, if we follow the tradition of Plato, the Platonic tradition of the Greek Academy. And we could also define philosophy as an analytic study of reality if we follow his disciple Aristotle. That's philosophy that we find in Pali grammar too. But basically what we find in Pali grammatical text is satta or shastra. That means the scholastic discourse. Scholastic in the sense of basically teaching a doctrine, a particular body of doctrine. In the case of the Buddhists, the body of doctrine is the Buddha Sasana, but there are other bodies of doctrine that are considered views or darshanas. So satta or shastra is the Indic or Indian dialectics between darshanas. So it is true that philosophy is called darshana, as we said yesterday, but there are many darshanas, but they combine in this dialectic setting, that is the shastra. So these are all things that we find in the grammatical text. Now, when it comes to Western philosophy, it is said that officially Western philosophy begins with Thales of Miletus, but basically the academic philosophy begins with Plato. And this is the inscription that, according to tradition, was found at the entrance of the Platonic Academy, that ignorance of geometry shall not enter. That implies that the philosophical discourse is based on a foundation, a scientific foundation. In this case, it's a scientific foundation of mathematics or geometry. So before we get into philosophy, we need to know geometry. That's the Western tradition. But in the Indian tradition, it seems that it is not geometry the basis of philosophy and science, but grammar. This is from a very important paper by Fritz Stahl, who has studied the ritual and scientific tradition of early India. He says that the earliest Indian sciences were ritual and grammar. If this is a fact, it is a peculiar fact, because there are people who would not regard grammar as a science, not to mention anything as unscientific as ritual. And he also says that Patanjali, not the yoga Patanjali, the grammarian Patanjali, has formulated the potter's principle. So if you want pots, you go to the potter. But if you want words, you don't go to a grammarian. Where do you go? You go to the loka, the world. For example, the marketplace where people speak the language. If grammar provides a derivation of a form that is not used, it is grammar that is wrong. Thus, grammar aims at empirical adequacy, and all its efforts are aimed at reaching this goal. This is Fritz Stahl's argument that because there is empirical adequacy, that's a feature of sciences. A science needs to adjust to the sense perception, to our experiential data, to our experience. Because grammar as a discipline adjusts to our experience, it can be called a science. Now this is an idea of Patanjali, that the beginnings of the Christian era, 2000 years ago. But if we move now to the Buddhist grammatical text, we find this motto that is found in Vimala Buddhist Mukamattadipani, otherwise known as Nyasa. If you go to manuscript libraries or even Buddhist libraries in Myanmar, you will find this Nyata everywhere. This is a very important text in Myanmar. It's a commentary on the Kachayana grammar. And this dictum of Vimala Buddhi is Yata loke tata saddha satte. So you can trace this important principle to Patanjali 2000 years ago. This is the principle of the philosophy of the grammarians. As in the world, so in grammar. So definitely there is something scientific in grammar, even if grammar is not always science. So if we would change or tweak the inscription at the entrance of the Philosophical Academy of Plato, and we would establish a Buddhist academy, we should say that non-grammarians shall not enter. A person who ignores grammar shall not enter the school of Buddhist philosophy, if that is to be a proper academic Buddhist philosophy. So with this in mind, we move to the second part, which is a specific grammatical text from Burma, that is the Mukamatasara. So these are the covers of the two books that I'm referring here. One is already mentioned, the Notes on the Pali Tradition in Burma. by von Hinuber. And the second is a history of Pali grammatical literature by the Most Venerable Bhadanta Bijjananda Vivamsa. And that, as you can see, or if you can't, I'm telling you, that was published 4 years ago, 2016. So it's very recent. In this book, on the right-hand side, you find some graphs with a relative chronology or a sort of chronology. And you can see here, this is, if you can read the Burmese, it's the kind of lineage of the Kachina school. The Kachina is the oldest extant Pali grammar. It's one of the first Pali texts that students read in the monasteries in Myanmar. And you can find the Mukkamatasara here, and the Mukkamatasara Tika, that means the commentary on the Mukkamatasara. And the author of this history tells us that it was written by Gunasagara Thera. We'll come back to that later. And that was in the 13th century AD, and that was in Pagan. So we know the time, and we know the place, we know the name of the author, and we know the two titles. But apart from these titles, what do we know? The truth is that we don't know much because the text has not been published on paper. We don't have as far as I know, there is no printed edition of the text. Another thing is that what you can see here is the Sampyantika, the Niruttisara Manjusa, and the Mukkamatasara. They're all put at the same level, but actually they are not. So we have the Kachina Vyakarana in the 6th century, the Vuti in the 8th, Mukkamattadipani on the 10th, the Sampyantika on the 12th, this is in Pagan already, and the Mukkamatasara in the Tika on the 13th century. And this Niruttisara Manjusa is actually a later commentary. So the Mukkamattadipani gives the Mukkamatasara. Mukkamattadipani basically means a commentary or an illustration, Dipani, of the main points of the Kachina. The main points means Mukkamatta, the most important, the most salient points. And usually because of the identity with the title, it is understood that this Mukkamatasara is a Sara, that means the essence of the Mukkamattadipani. But that is not quite right if we read the Mukkamatasara, because it is also based on the Sampyantika, the Rupa Siddhi, and other commentaries. So what I'm doing now is I'm trying to produce a critical edition of the Mukkamatasara, and for that I have collected so far 5 manuscripts. 2 of these manuscripts are found in the Fragile Palm Leaves collection that is kept in Bangkok, but actually most of the manuscripts are Burmese. These are Burmese manuscripts that went astray, they abandoned, they are living abroad, so to say. And one thing that is important about these 2 manuscripts, the first one is dated 1779, that means Burmese era 1141. This one is pretty good in my experience, it's quite a good manuscript. But these 2 manuscripts, the Mukkamatasara is accompanied by other grammatical texts. So in the bundle, you find the Mukkamatasara together with other grammars. This is important because later on, in the copies, you find the Mukkamatasara in bundles that do not contain any grammar. What happens sometimes when we work on manuscripts is that when we look at the catalogs, the titles are not quite right. So when I saw the title Mukkamatasara Dipani, I wasn't sure whether that was the Mukkamatasara or the Mukkamattadipani, but I suspected that it could be the Mukkamatasara, and in fact, this is the Mukkamatasara, but it has a different title. That's something that we have to take into account when we are doing research. These manuscripts are now fortunately available. This is the website, and you can actually access the manuscript, download it, and anyone can read it. You can see, you have the website here, you can go. Many manuscripts are not yet available, the images are not yet available, but they will slowly be uploaded. Now there are 2 more manuscripts. These are a little bit closer because we just have to cross the road. These are from the University Central Library, Yangon. Yes, so it's here. If you want, after that we can go and read them. These are both undated. That means the text ends with the last Pali verse, and there is no colophon, nothing as far as I could see. I only have the text of the Mukkamatasara, and I cannot tell anything about the bundle. And then there is another manuscript from Taton, the Upoti collection. This manuscript was copied in 1930. That means beginning of the 20th century. And you can see that the bundle contains other works that are not grammars. That means these copies of the Upoti library, they were not made exactly for the use of the grammarians. They were made simply for the preservation of the text. That's why you have the Mukkamatasara in a bundle where there is the Kudakapata Attakata, the Abbhidhamma Vatara Nisaya. These are non-related texts. That means the manuscript is basically trying to preserve a copy, and that's all. But it's very important that those who are responsible for the Upoti collection decided to copy the Mukhamatasara, knowing of its importance in Burma. Again, the manuscripts of the Upoti library are now available. This is the entire collection is now available in this website, this project that is hosted at the University of Toronto's library. That's called the Myanmar Manuscript Digital Library. There is part of sponsorship from Japan. There are Japanese scholars, Pali Text Society scholars. The University of Toronto is also helping. So you can go there and download any manuscript. Now, how does the Mukhamatasara look like? What is it exactly? It is written in 1,000 stanzas. So 1,000 verses. It's written in verse. Although some scholars have said that it was in prose, it is not correct. It's only in verse. And it's 1,000. It might look a little bit long. 1,000 stanzas is quite a lot, even to memorize. But if you look at the commentaries of the Kachina, they are much longer. So this is clearly an abbreviated version of the commentaries. The author, regarding the author that is called Gunasagara, in the colophon, he calls himself, or the Nigamana, he calls himself Baddo Kumaro. So what Baddo Kumaro means is not quite clear. This is an excerpt from the colophon, and this is the line. It says, Baddo Chayo Kumaro Aham, Gunasagara Mandito. So what does that mean? He is Gunasagara Mandita, he is adorned with the name Gunasagara, or else we can say he is adorned with an ocean of qualities or virtues. But he calls himself, he says, Aham, Baddo Kumaro. I'm a Baddo Kumaro. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but I think a Baddo Kumaro is not a monk. A Baddo Kumaro should be someone from the royal family or related to the court. So there are some indications that perhaps the author of the Mukhamatasara was a lay person, but very close to the Sangha, and actually a disciple of the learned Sayadaws of Pagan. So what is the Mukhamatasara? It is a summary of the Mukhamatadipani that has been said elsewhere, but it is also a summary of commentaries like the Sampyantika, which is not very, sometimes is not very respected in Myanmar, because the author of the Sampyantika is said to have written this work out of loba, basically out of lust, but still is a very good commentary, and we see that in the 13th century the Mukhamatasara actually was drawing a lot on the commentaries on the Mukhamatadipani. And another interesting feature that is different from other grammars, that the Mukhamatasara is interspersed with kavya, that means poetic stanzas. This is an example. So this is in the end of the first section on Sandhi, and this meter is called Suprabha, or you can also call it Saddara. So this is a very complex meter. The lines are long syllables. This kind of horn is the short syllable, so it's long, 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 short, and long, long, etc. This is not important here. The point is that this meter is non-canonical. You will never find this type of verse in the Tipitaka. It's not there, but you will find it in the Vutodaya. What that means is that the author of the Mukhamatasara was trying to show off, was trying to display his knowledge, not of the Tipitaka, but of the Vutodaya, that is a work from the Mahavihara in Sri Lanka. That's also interesting. We find many of these stanzas in very strange meters. And another thing about the Mukhamatasara is that it is well known. So later commentaries written in Pagan, they quote the Mukhamatasara, they know it, they have studied it, but it is not so well respected. It receives a lot of criticism, like in the Sutta Nidesa of Saddhamma Jyotipala, it is quite criticized. So that's another indication, in my opinion, that the author of this grammar might have been a kind of amateur student of the monks, maybe having a very high position in the royal court. He was called Thera, but as a sign of distinction, not because he was a real Thera. I don't know if that is possible or not, but from the colophon and from some other indications, that seems to be the case. And that would mean that one of these very important works written in Pagan was not written by a non-monastic, a little bit like with the Sampyantika. So generally we can say that the Mukhamatasara is a technical text that only initiates, only people with training can understand. This may explain why it is no longer in use. So you can't simply take the Mukhamatasara and read it if you haven't learned all the commentaries on the Kachayana. So the moment that these commentaries on the Kachayana were no longer studied, then the Mukamatasara became useless, and probably it ceased to be relevant in the monastic education system. Among the sources that are mentioned in the Mukamatasara, we find grammatical texts, but not only grammatical texts. There is also Abbhidhamma. We find the Nyasa, Rupa Siddhi, the Rupa Siddhi Tika, the Nyasa Padipa, that's the original title of the Sampyin Tika. The Saddhaniti is mentioned once, and there is this mention of the Saddhaniti is not directly with the title Saddhaniti. It says the Aggapanditas Bhagineyo, so the grammar of the nephew of Pagan's Maha Aggapandita. So this is the way that the Saddhaniti was known. It was the work of the nephew of the Aggapandita. And there is of course the mention of the Moggallana, but also the Abbhidhamma Avatara and the Namarupa Paricheda. There is this quotation, actually it's not a quotation of the Namarupa Paricheda. Some verses of the Mukamatasara are actually extracted, just taken, borrowed from the Namarupa Paricheda. Now we are talking about the Mukamatasara as part of the Kachayana literature. But the Mukamatasara itself has a literature. The text of the Mukamatasara is still available in manuscripts, but the Tika is not available. And there is also some Mukamatasara Nisaya that is anonymous, and this is also not available. And then there is the Mukamatasara Tika Nisaya that is anonymous, is also not available. So overall, the 75% of the Mukamatasara literature is lost, or is lost. It might be in some manuscript libraries. So I would encourage all students here to do more research. Maybe it can be discovered. The Mukamatasara itself in the West was not known until very recently. So these other texts might be discovered in the near future. And with that, we go to the third part. So go back to grammar. What is grammar? So grammar beyond words. So when we are reading Pali grammar, although usually there is the notion that we study Pali grammar in order to read Pali, and then we just read the Pali and that's it. What reading means is not that simple. Because when the children learn how to read, for instance, they already have some knowledge of the world. But when we are reading the Tipitaka, it's not that we already have some knowledge of what the Buddha taught. So we need not only the reading and the literal meaning of the words, but an interpretation. That's why grammar contains phonetics, that means the study of sounds, of linguistic sounds. This is the beginning of grammar. And that's why in Myanmar, you don't say grammar, you say sound. In Greek, grammar means the written symbol. It's something written. In the Indian tradition, grammar is something that has to do with the sound. So in Myanmar, we say tada. Tada means sound or even noise. So phonetics is the beginning. But then we go to morphology, that is the form, the rupa of the words. From there we move to syntax, which is the sambandha, the relationship between words. And from syntax we jump to the philosophy of language, how words represent reality. In the end, the Buddha Sasana has been preserved in the linguistic form. It's a language. It's the Buddha Vachana. It's a speech. So if we want to access the Buddha Vachana, we need to learn this speech and how speech works. But of course, the Dhamma itself is not speech. This speech is telling us the reality. So how do we move from language to reality? This is something that grammars also have to explain. And because of that, we move in a philosophical sort of atmosphere, and then we need to discuss aspects of epistemology, that in Indian tradition is called pramana theory. What are the means of valid knowledge? We also study logic, which is part of the grammar, that means nyaya, how to make an argument valid. So it has to be valid. Whether it is true or not, that's something that we can decide later, but at least it has to be valid. And overall, grammar is also about hermeneutics. I don't know if there is any word in Pali for hermeneutics, but I would say that the word attakata itself means hermeneutics, means the extraction of meaning. That means this meaning is not totally apparent. It needs to be extracted from the text. So this is what grammar is about. And why is grammar important? First of all, it is important to preserve the purity of the scriptures, that means of the Tipitaka, of the manuscripts. So these manuscripts are copied again and again, and then mistakes arise. So in order to preserve the textual tradition, we need grammar. This is to preserve the pariyatti. As we said, we need grammar in order to extract the meaning rather than translating. You might have noticed that there are not all translations from Pali into Myanmar. Instead, we have Nisayas. If you study the Nisayas, they are based on grammatical knowledge. The way that they extract meaning from the Pali text is based on a very detailed and extensive knowledge of the grammatical tradition. So grammar is also about understanding. Without grammar, proper understanding is not there. And what is important in the tradition is not simply to say what words mean, but how they mean that. We have to be able to explain, for instance, why Nibbana means what it means. And there are actually real debates in that. Even in Lady Sayadaw's Paramatta Dipani, the point of controversy regarding Nibbana is completely about the grammar, about the morphology of the word Nibbana. It all depends on which suffixes we are reading. And so these are points of controversy. Another important aspect is that the Dhamma, as we said, is made of sound. So the Dhamma ultimately is not something written, it's Buddha Vachana, that is Satta, is sound. So grammar is important also for the performance of the text. That is something that especially Western philologists have overlooked for a very long time. Now there is more attention paid to the performative aspect of the literature. But this, of course, in Myanmar, that there is no need to insist on that. Another point that I would like to highlight is critical thinking and openness. These grammatical texts are written in the Shastra style, Satta, means they are written in the form of a dialogue. This is not a dialogue exactly between friends, although sometimes it's understood that it's a disciple with a teacher, but this disciple always tries to find the fault and always is objecting to the points of the doctrine, so that the teacher or the master of the discipline has to give good reasons to show that the text is correct. So it's not simply that we are teaching the text, you memorize it and that's all. You have to prove why the text is correct by undergoing severe criticism, and then you have to answer this criticism. So that teaches openness. In conclusion then, I would say that the Pali grammarians of Pagan, like Gunasagara, the author of the Mukkamatasara, they should be considered the earliest philosophers or the earliest scientific minds of Myanmar. That goes then to point 2. If a history of Burmese philosophy, or if you wish, Burmese science, has to be written, it cannot be complete without including the Pali grammarians of Pagan. And finally, third point, philological work like the edition of the Mukkamatasara is required for point 2. So of course, if we want to study the grammarians of the Pagan period, first we need them to be accessible, we need to do philological work, recover these texts from the manuscripts, study them very closely, probably translate them or give interpretations, and only then we will understand what they say. And by reconstructing this discourse, we will be able to reconstruct the beginnings of philosophical and scientific thought in Myanmar. So, thank you very much. If I may say one more thing, the slideshow in this website, if you go there, you can download the slides of this conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Alesh Ruiz-Falkes, for this wonderful research and presentation. Okay, I got it. Let me take 1 or 2 minutes to translate this into Burmese. Shamsina Buddha text Pali Thana Mu Dr. Alex Ruiz-Falkes Tinitim Jarahaka Pakan Keka Drajan Pali Drajan the Jamside Mukha Mata Tara Sure Jangu to Turina Low Tabare Tijanga Sao Nene Moponea Tebao Sao Nene Pone Tachemishide, Pisa Nene Beshide, Pisa Kua Tian Tetuye, Round Tebu Tamashide, UCL Sajida Tamashide, not Kuaro, Tatoma Shide Upoti Sajid Aye Sajida Tamashi. မြန်မာနိုင်ငံပါဠိတရားကျမ်းရဲ့သမိုင်းကိုလိုက်တဲ့အခါမှာကျန်စစ်သားလက်ထက်ကနေစတယ်လို့ပြောပါတယ်အဲ့မှာပါဠိသင်ရုံနဲ့မကဘူးပါဠိကျမ်းစာတွေကိုတီးဖြတ်တဲ့တီးဖြတ်တဲ့အလုပ်တွေရှိခဲ့တယ်ဆိုတော့အဲ့ဒါကြောင့်မလို့ဂျာမနီနိုင်ငံက Professor Oscar Heinhofer ကဘာပြောတော့ဆိုပါဠိလေ့လာခြင်းတဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်တွေဟာဘာသာပြန်တာပဲဖြစ်ဖြစ်စာရေးတာပဲဖြစ်ဖြစ်မြန်မာနိုင်ငံမှာရေးသားတဲ့ပါဠိကျမ်းစာအကြောင်းအထူးဖြင့်ပါဠိတရားအကြောင်းသိရမယ်လို့ပြောထားတဲ့အကြောင်းသူကိုးကားသွားတယ်။နောက်ကျန်တဲ့ဟာတွေကတော့သူရဲ့အဓိကအချက်ပထမဆုံးအချက်ကတရားကဒီသိပ္ပံပညာတစ်မျိုးဖြစ်တယ်ဆိုတာသိပ္ပံဆိုတာကလူမှုရေးသိပ္ပံတစ်မျိုးဖြစ်တယ်သူကိုးကားတဲ့စာတစ်ခုထဲမှာတရားဆိုတာအတန်ကိုပြောတာအိန္ဒိယနိုင်ငံနေနဲ့ပြောရင်စာရေးတာကိုပြောတာမဟုတ်အတန်အဲ့ဒီအတန်စကားပြောရမှာဖြစ်တဲ့အတန်communication လုပ်တဲ့အခါမှာတယောက်နဲ့တယောက်နားလဲအောင်လုပ်တယ်အဲ့တော့အတန်ကိုနားလဲခြင်းပဲသွားမှာတော့ဆိုတော့လောကထဲကိုသွားမယ်ဆိုလိုတာကတရား grammar ကိုလေ့လာတာတရားကိုလေ့လာတာလောကကိုလေ့လာတာပဲဆိုတော့အိန္ဒိယရဲ့အထွေးခေါ်သူပထမဆုံးရှင်းပြသွားတယ်အဲ့ဒီနောက်ပိုင်းမှာမြန်မာနိုင်ငံမှာတန်ဃာတွေလေ့လာတဲ့ရူပသတိကျမ်းတဲ့နှစ်ပေါင်း200လောက်ဆိုတဲ့အခုသူတင်ပြတဲ့ကြောင့်မုခမတ္တသာရဆိုတဲ့ကျမ်းအဲ့ကျမ်းကိုအဲ့ကျမ်းကြောင့်သူပြောရတာဆရာစုတို့ခရရရေးထားတဲ့ကျမ်းဖြစ်ပါတယ်တန်ပြင်ဒီကာထက်လည်းပဲစောပါတယ်တဲ့အမေတန်ပြင်ဒီကာရဲ့နောက်မှာမုခမတ္တသာရဒီပနီဆိုတာသူဖြစ်လာတယ်ဆိုတဲ့အကြောင်းအဲ့ဒါလေးပြောပြတယ်အဲ့ဒီနောက်ပိုင်းမုခမတ္တသာရဒီပနီရဲ့ကျမ်းပြုဆရာအကြောင်းပြောတယ်နောက်ပြီးတော့ခုကနေဒါနိုင်ငံတိုရွန်တိုတက္ကသိုလ်မှာမြန်မာနိုင်ငံထုတ်တဲ့ပါဠိကျမ်းစာတွေကိုအထူးဖြင့်ပေးစာတွေကိုdigitize လုပ်ပြီးတော့ online ပေါ်မှာရှေ့အောင်လုပ်နေတဲ့အကြောင်းအဲ့ဒီ project လေးတွေသူပြောသွားတယ်နောက်ဆုံးကတော့တရားကဘာကြောင့်အရေးကြီးတယ်ဆိုတော့သူပြောတယ်သူကတရားဆရာပါကျမ်းစာတွေတန်ရှင်းစင်ကြယ်ဖို့အတွက်နံပါတ်1နံပါတ်2ကတော့ကျမ်းစာရဲ့အ내တိပ္ပယ်တွေကိုရယူထုတ်ယူဖို့အတွက်နံပါတ်3ကတော့ဓမ္မဆိုတာကတဲ့တရားပါပဲတဲ့ဘာဆိုတရားကအတန်ကိုပြောတာဥပမာရုပ်ဖတ်အဲ့ဒါလည်းပါမယ်ထင်ပါတယ်အောက်ဆုံးကတော့ critical thinking ဆိုတာတရားလေ့လာတဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်ဟာတွေးတတ်တယ်ပေါ့နော်ယုတ်တိရှိတွေးတတ်တယ်အဲ့ဒါကြောင့်မို့လို့နောက်ဆုံးအနေနဲ့ conclusion အနေနဲ့သူပြောသွားတာကဒီတရားကျမ်းဟာမြန်မာနိုင်ငံမှာအရှိဆုံးပေါ်တဲ့ကျမ်းတွေရှေ့အကြဆုံးကျမ်းတွေဖြစ်တဲ့အတွက်ကြောင့်မလို့မြန်မာနိုင်ငံရဲ့ရှေ့အကြဆုံး philosopher တွေးခေါ်ရှင်များလို့လည်းပြောနိုင်တယ်နောက်ပြီးတော့ scientific minded people ဆိုတာသိပ္ပံနည်းကျတွေးခေါ်တဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်တွေလည်းဖြစ်နိုင်တယ်တဲ့ဒီတရားကျမ်းတွေကိုနားမလည်ဘဲနဲ့သူတို့ရဲ့သမိုင်းကိုနားမလည်ဘဲနဲ့မြန်မာနိုင်ငံရဲ့အတွေးခေါ်သမိုင်းကိုနားမလည်နိုင်ပါဘူးဆိုပြီးတော့ဆရာကြီးကအဆုံးသတ်သွားပါတယ်နောက်မေခွန်းတွေကြတော့ပြီးမှမေးမှဖြစ်ပါတယ်အခုဒုတိယစာတန်းကိုမသွားခင်မှာရောင်တိုင်းဒေသကြီးရဲ့ဝန်ကြီးဖြစ်တဲ့ဝန်ကြီးဦးနိုင်အလင်းဒီနေ့စာရန်ရှင်3ဦးကိုလက်ဆောင်ပေးဖို့အစီအစဉ်လေးဖြစ်ပါတယ်အဲ့ဒါလေးစီစဉ်ပေးပါဆက်လေးလေးနေပါပြီဝန်ကြီးအပေါ်ကြောင့်ဝန်ကြီးဆရာတော်ထဲနေဝင်ဟဲ့Maybe you should go there. Can you all go to the front to receive the
May I now cordially invite Unai Lin, Minister of Social Welfare, Yangon Region Government, to present souvenir to the chairperson as a token of appreciation. May I respectfully invite the most venerable Auspo Sayadaw, Professor Dr. Tamasami, to accept the present. The most venerable, please. May I respectfully invite Sayaji Dr. Dola, retired head of Department of History, University of Mandalay. Thank you very much, Unai to give the present. Now, may I cordially invite Sayaji Dr. Pogao, Rector, University of Yangon, to present souvenir to speakers as a token of appreciation. May I invite the presenter, L.S. Riggs Falkert, to accept the gift. May I invite the presenter, Dr. Dorpi Pyocho, Dean of Academic Affairs at SSPU, to accept the gift. May I invite the presenter, Dr. Francois Tonian, Foundation Member and Executive Director, the Inyo Institute, Myanmar, and former Deputy Director, to accept the gift. Thank you very much, Sayaji. This is time for group photo section. Thank you, Excellency, the most venerable Excellency, Sayaji, and the speaker.
Now is the time for continuing our paper reading session. Thank you.
The second speaker is Dr. P. Pyocho. Dr. P. Pyocho is Dean of Graduate Studies at Shan State Buddhist University, who has mainly represented me in organizing this. So she has her hands on everything that you see here. She graduated with business management from Oxford University, and then she moved to Buddhist studies. She completed her master's at School of Oriental African Study, University of London, before she completed her PhD in Patana at King's College London University. အခုပြောမဲ့တော်တော်ဖြစ်ဖြိုးကြော်ကရှမ်းပြည်နယ်ဗုဒ္ဓတက္ကသိုလ်ရဲ့မဟာဌာနမှုဖြစ်ပါတယ်also တက္ကသိုလ်စီးပွားရေး management ဘာသာရပ်ကို BA ဖွဲ့ရရှိပြီးတော့လန်ဒန်တက္ကသိုလ်မှာမဟာဝိဇ္ဇာဖွဲ့နဲ့နောက်ပြီးတော့လန်ဒန်တက္ကသိုလ်ကပဲ King's College မှာပထမနဲ့PhD ရလာတဲ့အဘိဓမ္မာပညာရှင်ဖြစ်ပါတယ်လန်ဒန်တက္ကသိုလ် King's College မှာလည်းစာပြပါတယ်အခုရှမ်းပြည်နယ်ဗုဒ္ဓတက္ကသိုလ်မှာလည်းပဲမဟာဌာနမှုထိအဖြစ်ဆောင်ရွက်ပါတယ်အခုမနေ့ရဲ့ဒီနေ့တွေ့မြင်ရတဲ့ဒီ conference ရဲ့အဓိကဘုံမွေးကိုစားအဓိကဆောင်ရွက်တဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်ဖြစ်ပါတယ်ဒေါက်တာဖြစ်ဖြိုးကျော်
Thank you, Venerable Sir. Dear the most Venerable Sayadawjis, Venerable member of the Sanghas, Siali, and ladies and gentlemen, I pay respect. So I would like to, my talk today is about, as you can see here, Abbhidhamma scholars of the University of Yangon and their impact in Myanmar and beyond. So here in this talk, what I will do is I will explain what Abbhidhamma is first, and then I will touch a little bit on the commentary and narratives of the transmission of Abbhidhamma, and then moving on to the roles of Abbhidhamma scholars from the University of Yangon or Rangoon back then, how they make Abbhidhamma more accessible to a wider audience. And then I will explain a little bit about the relationship between Abbhidhamma and Vipassana meditation and its impact in the contemporary society. And then finally I will talk about what do we mean by remembering the past and how can we find ways forward, which is the title of this conference. So let's look at
you have to point this side.
Point this side. Yeah. Okay. Oh yes, I got it now. So we all know what Abbhidhamma is, especially in Myanmar, right? And because in Myanmar we are very familiar with the idea of Abbhidhamma, and Abbhidhamma studies in Myanmar is very unique features of Burmese Buddhism, if you like. Abhidhamma, if we translate it in terms of English, for example, we can call it Theravada analytical philosophy of causality. Let me just explain this, why we have this kind of very lengthy translation of the term Abhidhamma. So, as you can see from the slideshow, we have 7 texts in the Abbhidhamma Pitaka, or Abbhidhamma Pitaka in Myanmar. And if we look at from number 1, the Mathangini, to Yamaka, what it does is it explains the reality in terms of our experience, what the reality is, in terms of analyzing the reality into dharmas, so the elementary components that constitutes the process of experience, how we experience daily life. So in terms of what we hear, what we see, in terms of how we taste, in terms of touch as well. So this is these texts actually talks about analysis. Please note that in the Katawatu, it deals actually with the debates between Abbhidhamma schools of philosophy and other early schools of Buddhism. But even then, if we look closely at the Katawatu, what we see is we also see very analytical, detailed aspects of the reality. So there were conversations and debates in terms of the dialogue. And here, the point is that they are also analyzing the various aspects of the reality in different details and different dimensions. But then again, if we look at the patana or pattern, what we see is these different components of the dharmas, so Dhamma, they are bring together and synthesized into in terms of conditional relations, so cause and effects. But here, cause and effects doesn't really just mean one cause or one effect, but there are multiple causes or multiple conditions giving rise to multiple effects. So the Patana also talks about how they are related. That's why what we see is that in the Patana, we say conditional, the translation, the usual translation is the conditional relations because it's talking about how things are interconnected. I would like to draw your attention to the very early, how these kind of ideas are early they are. So if we look at the canonical, what we call canonical texts, so the Abbhidhamma Panajan, or the 7 texts of the Abbhidhamma, scholars usually takes them around from 2nd BCE to 2nd CE. These are called what we call canonical texts. But then again, later we also see the development of Abbhidhamma thoughts and texts in Sri Lanka, in Myanmar or in Burma. And from the 5th to the 30th century onwards. And then later, what we have is we have vernacular texts, which is like the handbook, various handbooks, various texts written in Burmese and so forth. So we see this kind of history of literary history in terms of Abbhidhamma. Then I would like to explain a little bit more about Abbhidhamma list. So, as we all know, Abbhidhamma is full of lists, full of items, listing, and so on. So, one of the popular texts and popular way of studying Abbhidhamma, so when we say in Myanmar, we say, okay, I'm learning Abbhidhamma. What they mean is they are learning Tenjo. So they are learning Abbhidhamma Tat Sangaha, right? And in the Abbhidhamma Tat Sangaha, there are 9 chapters, but when we actually just look at it as a whole, what it does is that it talks about conditioned dharmas and the unconditioned dharmas. So to summarize the Abbhidhamma Tat Sangaha, you can summarize it like that. And within that, there are different ways of explaining these individual dharmas. So the first one, if you is in terms of rupa. So you all know that there are 28 types of rupa, chittas, 89 chittas, and chittasika or sittate, 52 chittasika. And the main point here is that in terms of Buddhist philosophy, what they argue is that these dharmas, they arise when there are right conditions. So we are coming back to the idea of conditionality. Okay, so when there are right conditions, these rupa, chitta, chittasika, they arise. And they are also mutually completely dependent on each other. So this idea of mutual dependency, relying on one another, reliance on one another. And then they are also temporary because they are constantly arising and falling away. So these three ideas, they are within Tenjo. And then Tenjo also talks about unconditioned Dharma, so Nibbana, Nibbana. And here it's, now we can say that, okay, this is quite, Abbhidhamma can be summarized in a very, very simple terms. But when we talk about Abbhidhamma studies, as we all know, in Myanmar as well as beyond Myanmar, the Abbhidhamma is regarded very highly in terms of its technicalities. Some scholars say that it's very dry. So in Myanmar it would be like Seiwenzaja, Tek Makamu. But if you go and ask a Burmese person, they might say otherwise as well. But now I would like to draw your attention to the stories that we find how Abbhidhamma is transmitted to human realm, because we know that, according to the text, the Buddha taught Abbhidhamma in Tawaringta or Tawaringsa, and to his mother, who passed away and became the god. But before we get to that story, what we also hear is that after his enlightenment, on the fourth week after his enlightenment, the Buddha reflected these 7 Abbhidhamma texts at Bodhgaya. So here, the jewel house. So what you can see here is the jewel house. Sorry, the next slide. So the jewel house. So here, and here where they say that it's, the Buddha reflected on the Abbhidhamma. And the story goes that rays of light reaching infinite universes as he contemplates on conditionality, i.e. the patana or the patan, and which represent the perfect wisdom of the Buddha, so the omniscience of the Buddha's knowledge. And then, so the Buddha reflected on and came up with this, or not came up, discover this Abbhidhamma teaching. And then he then taught to the gods in heavenly realms. And we might wonder, well, how does the teaching that was taught in heavenly realm is transferred to human realm? And according to the story, it's transferred because in the previous Buddha's time, so Kassapa Buddha, the Buddha taught the Abbhidhamma at Tawaringta, and then but during lunchtime he would come down and have lunch and taught a very short summary to Sariputta, and then Sariputta then taught Abbhidhamma to his disciples, 500 disciples. 500 disciples who were bats during the Kassapa time, but they heard the teaching of the Buddha, the teaching of the Abbhidhamma during Kassapa time, and then they will all enjoy heavenly pleasure during the period of Kassapa until our present Buddha. So that's the story that we are all familiar with. And that story, where can we find this story? We find this story in Attasalini. So Attasalini is the commentary on the Dhammasingani. And this is where we get to the part about the Abbhidhamma scholars of Yangon University. Because as you can see from here, the translator of Attasalini into English is Upe Mountain, Chai Upe Mountain, right? And it was published by the Pali Text Society in 1920s and 21s, so 2 volumes. So what we have is 2 volumes, and that actually brings us to the idea about how these kind of stories, which is very well known in Myanmar, is actually transmitted to the international audience. Okay, international audience. Without this kind of translation, that kind of transmission couldn't happen. It could happen, but only to a few people who can read Pali. And it will be very limited outreach. It will not reach to, as we will see later, how it's kind of spreading the study of Abbhidhamma in other countries. So let's turn to Siaji Upe Mountain. As we all know, Upe Mountain is very well, highly regarded and very learned person, and he had education in traditional education. Although he was a Christian, he was sent to a monastery to Saya Koyenji in Insane and learn Lokaniti and all the traditional Buddhist texts when he was young. And then he went to a local high school. And then he got a BA in Pali, an MA from Rangoon College. And then later, he then won a scholarship to study in Oxford at Exeter College, where he received B.Lit, so Bachelor in Literature, for his work on translation of the Visuddhimagga. And then he spent 2 years in Oxford, and then he also studied old Mon scripts and old Mon inscriptions in the School of Oriental Study, which became the School of Oriental and African Studies, where I and Dr. Francois, we got our degrees from. And then, not only that, he studied law in Inner Temple in London as well. So you can see how he is kind of, growing and learning all the time and expanding his knowledge during the limited time, 4 years that he had in the UK. Even before he went to England, he became the youngest professor of Pali studies at Rangoon College in July 1912. And he started actually working as full scholar of Pali studies. And then he did so many things for Rangoon College as well as the University of Yangon, when it became the University of Yangon. The principals, he also, in 1937, he became the principal of University College. At that time, he was the first Myanmar national to be appointed this kind of high office duties. So he became very much kind of drawn into administrative work. But that didn't actually discourage him from studying, a wide range of things. What I would call is he was a polymath, because he had skills in linguistics. He translated Glass Palace, so Mananya Zawinji. So he did the translation. So we can regard him as a historian because he was very much interested in history. He also wrote things on Theravada studies or Buddhism. And he also published many things on inscriptions as well. So his interest is very wide. He was actually very much widely engaged in different kind of academic setting and scholarly engagement. So in the 50s, he went to America and he gave a series of lectures. It was a tour around America where he gave many lectures on Buddhism, Myanmar culture, history, and so forth. One thing to note about him is that his work, published by Oslo University Press, there are 5 of them. And they are still in use, and we as scholars and researchers of Buddhism, Myanmar study or Burma study, we still use his publications. And one of the publications that I would like to draw your attention to is this inscription of Burma. So Myanmar Taiyin Chao Samya. Okay. Professor Luz and Upe Mountain Siaji, they published 5 volumes under the series of University of Yangon Oriental Study publications, you see. But it was printed in Oxford, and although it was kind of under this series. So you can imagine how the prestige of the then Rangoon University actually reached to countries like America and England and so forth, and it has this kind of it was the forerunner of the scholarship. I was trying to find this text in UCL, but I couldn't find it. But in SOAS in London, I think they have this text. Another very kind of Siaji Upe Mountain and others actually work very closely with Burma Research Society and help establish the journal of Burma Research Society. Okay, so I would like to now turn your attention to this society, which was founded in 1910, and you can see the founders. They were very much part of here, Jun Fonel and Ume Ao. They were very much interested in bringing international communities, cosmopolitan society that were thriving at that time in Rangoon, together to give these kind of scholars, students, a platform where they can come and discuss their interest in history, culture, linguistics, any kind of studies. And that is very unique. That was not unique in the sense that it's also following a trend that was happening in other countries like Ceylon and Thailand. And this book actually is a study about Burma Research Society and its publications. But the main point here is that the Yangon University had a very close connection with this society. Upe Mountain in particular published the most in this journal, 71 contributions, 71 works. And when we actually look at the journal of Burma Research Society, what we see is the breadth in terms of different areas of studies. It was very wide. The depth, also the scholarship, the very good scholarship is also there. And they publish research paper also in Burmese language. So that was very unique as well. And that kind of contribution, the unique contribution that this society make is bringing people from diverse backgrounds and actually allowing them to present their different views or diverse views in an academic format and platform. And that actually enhanced our understanding of history of Burma, customs, language, and literature. Okay? And then it also created new kind of knowledge based on research and collaboration. New kind of knowledge because Siai Upe Mountain, he was very worried that Rangoon University didn't really have the text, the Burmese text, to be taught at the university level. So he was very worried, and this journal actually gave them the platform to do so. Another figure that I would like to draw your attention to is Wu Xuezhan Ang. Wu Xuezhan Ang, he's also a very innovative person in that he also published interesting things in terms of science and how Buddhism can be understood in terms of scientific dialogue and scientific theories. In particular, if we look at here, his publication, Buddhism and Science, this is actually about how he argues that Buddhism is a scientific system. He mentions 18 different topics that we now come to be regarded as scientific studies or scientific areas such as biology, chemistry, physics, embryology, and so forth. So this, what he was trying to do in this article, which was published in Journal of Burma Study, is that he was trying to highlight how Buddhism can be related to or understand within contemporary scientific knowledge systems. And that was very important for scholars, early scholars of the Yangon University, because what they were trying to do is they were trying to highlight the significance of Buddhism and Buddhist teachings in the modern world, so modern contemporary society. Now, very quickly, another important figure who taught Abbhidhamma at Rangoon University was Siaro U Taitila. We all know him as Tatoshe Siaroji. Okay, and he again was internationally educated. But I would like to move on to the next item, which is about drawing your attention to how other Burmese Sayadaws play a very important role in bringing the understanding of Abbhidhamma studies and also the Buddhist doctrines, and had a huge impact even in the contemporary contemporary world, not just in Myanmar, but also in other countries. So Ledi Siaro, the first person, Ledi Siaroji wrote many texts, we all know that, but he also popularized Vipassana meditation and study of Abbhidhamma, especially amongst lay people. Okay, so we all became very much interested in Abbhidhamma study from the early 20th century onwards. Another person is Mula Mengon Siaro as well. He and Ledi Siaro, these two figures actually gave rise to what we now know as mindfulness movement, because various pupils of these figures, they pass on their meditation tradition, meditation techniques to those who are interested in meditation from the West, basically, and they then kind of modify a little bit, not too much, and present it as meditation as mindfulness. And we all know how mindfulness actually gave rise to modern cognitive science and meditation. The research is flourishing. And this book, for example, is one of them. So the science of meditation. So it talks about how, the Buddhist roots, including Visuddhimagga as well. The next, finally, what I like to turn to is I have talked about how we could, the history of Abbhidhamma study and influential figures in the history of Burma. And we had a very long tradition of Abbhidhamma studies, not just from the 19th century, but it goes back all the way to Pu period, or the 5th century, around 5th century AD. And when we talk about remembering the past, what I would like to argue is that when the past, some events, some episodes, they are painful. Some are full of joyful moments and events. So what I would like to propose here is an ambivalent approach, which is that, when we look at the history of the University of Yangon, we can have appreciative joy for our achievements that our founding fathers have achieved, and also we are still achieving, but also compassionate recollections of our missed opportunities. Okay? Otherwise, we would have very little motivation. Yesterday, Professor Dr. Myo Tenji, he mentioned about motivation to do research. And this ambivalent approach, having Karuna and Mudita all together combined, we could have motivation, but also like our Oso Siaro said, we can also have confidence, because his talk, if you remember from yesterday, was talking about building confidence. If we can have these two together, we can have a confident learner and teachers. And what that means is we have to actually embrace and accept joyful and painful periods and events. If we ignore either, one or another, then the story is not complete and we cannot move forward. So how do we move forward? In order to move forward, we have to remember that although now we are celebrating the centenary of Rangoon University or Yangon University, it is still a very young institution. We, the Republic of Union of Myanmar, is still a young nation. So what we have to do, we have to remember the task, we have to think about the task ahead. And what the kind of, what we are trying to do with this conference is that to some extent it's similar to what our founding fathers were trying to do. So we still face the same kind of issues as our founding fathers. So what kind of knowledge would we like to foster in future and now? What is the role of education? So this is very important. And how can we integrate traditional and contemporary learning or traditions of teachings and so forth? So these are the kind of questions that I hope this conference would actually allow us to have a dialogue. And the final point that I would like to draw your attention to is Siaji Upe Mountain, Siaji Ushue Zhao, and all the others, founding fathers, they had a liberal outlook, which means that they were they did not shy away from engaging with the dialogue with people who had a different opinions. And they were trying to build collaborative relationships within Myanmar and beyond. So they co-published many works. They did many research. They did not shy away from learning from others as well. So that point, I think we have to keep that in mind. We have to kind of have a growth attitude so that we can expand our knowledge and we can have a kind of self-questionings about how we can move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Pipiojo, for this wonderful presentation. Siama Dr. Pipiojo, Timja Sarangu, and a champion Malu, Piam Messay. Abbhidhamma Jao Permaso, a champion Timjare, I now find mom. Abbhidhamma who Kabab or Yao Kabati on 2 different English part and she on local tema. Young Dagdu ye, Chimada Kanganda, Yeba Kanganda, Pure Jar Itema, Sia Upe Mountain Heads are also in, also Dagdua, oh, ya Peter. Abbhidhamma Lila James, also Dagduma, Bilip where the yak had. Now say issues are so intentional, Jampermaso, Shite Radimacao, Kona Aminimatura, Pokur in it. Say Upi Mountain and say issues on Roa. To do low nine. Yamazima, you're not better the Chania Mayo, Kona engaging pitable, engaging city. Anyhow, Digat habit of Pioja water. Through ye. Anybody, Myanmar, the Burma Research Society, Myanmar Turina, I think here, Channel Chimes and Sia Upemon Yede, Samba Konaset the Kugu, Sansi Chimes, so Yendua. Do you engaging today, do you not Sunday, Adelune, Sia Ushus are only tea time. Now, every time, Abbhidhamma and a cook about Namachini, the mindfulness movement, anyhow. Kababo Yaon loaded Poku with him, or Sarah Utetila, Sarah Utila Matanke, my lady Saroido, Namula Mengon Saroido, and Saroid Pa, a cook global mindfulness movement, pioneer. See, you have to the vocal report. Now, Sarah Shintitila level, England, my China, Pido. Now, young day to my beat my lap, Jarekama. Now, Nayandari, and then said to a through အမြင်တွေနဲ့အမြင်နဲ့ engage လုပ်နေတဲ့ဆရာတွေဒါကြောင့်မလို့ရောင်တဲ့သူရာဖြစ်နေဆင်းရဲတဲ့အခါမှာအဓိကအရေးကြီးတာက way forward အနေနဲ့ဆိုရင်အနာဂတ်အနေနဲ့ဆိုရင်နိုင်ငံရဲ့ပညာရေးခန်းကဏ္ဍအဲ့ဒီအရာတွေပြန်ပြီးတော့တွေးခေါ်ဖို့လိုအပ်တယ်နောက်ပြန်ပြီးတော့ဆန်းစစ်ဖို့လိုအပ်တယ်နောက်ပြီးတော့ဒီနိုင်ငံရှိတဲ့ဘုဒ္ဓအဟောင်းနဲ့နောက်ပြီးတော့ဘုဒ္ဓအတိတ်လို့ခေါ်တဲ့အနောက်တိုင်းဘုဒ္ဓတွေနဲ့အဲ့ဒီနှစ်ခုဘယ်လိုပေါင်းစပ်ပြီးတော့ပညာရေးကိုမြင့်တင်မယ်ဆိုတဲ့ဟာအဲ့ဒါပြောပြနောက်ဆုံးအနေနဲ့ကတော့ရောင်တဲ့သူရဲ့သမိုင်းပေါ့နော်ဂုဏ်ယူစရာလည်းအများကြီးရှိတယ်နောက်ပြီးတော့ခက်ခဲတဲ့အချိန်တွေလည်းရှိခဲ့တယ်အဲ့ဒီအရာတွေကိုကရုဏာနဲ့မုဒိတာနှစ်ခုနဲ့ပြန်ပြီးတော့ကြည့်ပြီးကိုယ့်အကိုဒီတိုင်းမနေဘဲနဲ့ကဘာကြီးနဲ့အမြဲတမ်းဝင်ထွက်သွားလာသူတွေနာလုံနေဖို့စကားပြောနေဖို့လိုအပ်တဲ့အကြောင်းဆရာမတော်ဖြည်းဖြည်းကျော်ပြောပါတယ်လက်ခုပ်တီး offer ပေးကြပါSo the last speaker is Dr. Francois Tanturier. He's French. And he's the founder of the India Institute. He's going to be speaking, I think, about this institute as well. He's an architect as well as historian. So he's going to be speaking how King Mindo develops the idea of the design of Mandalay, and this is part of his forthcoming book, Dr. Centenary.
Most Venerable Dhammasami, most venerable member of the Sangha, most venerable nuns, and distinguished audience and professors of Yangon University. I'm very honored to be part of this conference, and it's a pleasure to be here with you today. So I'll be talking today about an unusual Buddhist term, which I mean you probably most of the members of the Sangha won't have come across in the Buddhist texts. But in doing this, I'll be kind of relating to what the most venerable Sayadaw yesterday were talking about concerning engagement, research, and deeper understanding of what surrounds us. I'm going to be talking about the founding of Mandalay and how it relates to how we could experience our current world. Partly following the precedents of Ava and Amarapura, the founding of Mandalay by King Mindon in the mid-19th century also encapsulated innovative and creative dimensions. Among this was the large extent to which textual authority offered model for action for the king and his court all along the successive steps of the protocol for establishing the new royal center. Towards the end of this protocol, in one stunning instances of this creativity, Mindon's court undertook to materialize a simile found in the Milindapanya, the Blessed One Bazaar or Sabapana. The Blessed One Bazaar is a simile elaborated by the Venerable Nagasena in one section of the Milindapanya. The simile explained, as John Strong, a famous Buddhologist, puts it, that, quote, one can direct towards the bazaar one's devotion to obtain long life, good health, high birth, and nirvana. End of quote. The conversation between King Milinda and Venerable Nagasena, quoted from the English translation, is as follows. And what, Venerable Nagasena, is a bazaar, and the Pali term for sabapana, for all manner of merchandise set up by the Blessed One, the Buddha. The Blessed One Bazaar for all manner of merchandise, O King, is a ninefold word of the Buddha, and the relics remaining of his body and of the things he used, and the sacred mounds erected over them, and the jewel of the order. And it's in that bazaar that are set out by the Blessed One the attainment in future birth of high lineage, of wealth, of long life, and of good health, and of beauty, and of wisdom, and of worldly glory, and of heavenly glory, and of nirvana. O King, in the Blessed One's bazaar for all manner of merchandise, advantages are to be bought for karma according to requirement. And this, O King, is what is called the Blessed One bazaar for all manner of merchandise. Such were the authority of the text and the high esteem and reverence given to it by the throne that its contents was engraved on stone along with the entire contents of the Milinapanya and the Buddhist scriptures within the Mahalokamara Zain Kotoro Pagoda in Mandalay. The plan of the presentation is a series of questions as follows. How was the Blessed One Sabapana made tangible in Mandalay? In other words, what was the process by which the Buddhist metaphor as a written text only available to monks became visible in physical form? Where did the Blessed One Sabapana materialize? What does the answer to these two questions tell us about the motives and Mindon and his court literati and the creative way Buddhist knowledge was used by the court elite in pre-colonial times? Answering these questions will help us determine whether the Blessed One Sabapana, as materialized in Mandalay, can offer a paradigm for Myanmar's higher education in the 21st century, and if so, to what extent and under what condition. Here, I want to emphasize that my argument is not to support or advocate for a larger place for Buddhism and its teachings in the curricula of government universities, but to illustrate how the creative use of authoritative texts served effort at the highest level towards wider engagement with what considered in compound times as the only corpus of knowledge worth disseminating. How was the Blessed One Bazaar made tangible? How was the Blessed One Bazaar made tangible in Mandalay's outer city? How did the throne orchestrate its creation? Besides the monasteries that he had already donated close to Mandalay Hill, Mindon had allocated land for 18 monasteries in the eastern part of Mandalay outer city. The king, therefore, complied with Nagasena Simile by providing for the jewel of the order, the Sangha. To have the monasteries donated in the most diligent manner, elements of Amarapura's royal complex were dismantled and reused for the erection of the new religious structures in Mandalay, as evidenced by highly elaborate partitions decorated with inlaid mirrors at the Yemetin and Mogang monasteries in Mandalay. So here I'm showing a parabag from the National Library in Rangoon, which shows the line of monasteries located in the eastern part of Mandalay, with a dotted line in yellow. So this was materialized, the donation of monasteries to the jewel of the order, the Sangha. By bringing corporeal relics and relics of use from Sri Lanka, parading them throughout the new capital, Mindon offered a decisive step in materializing Nagasena Simile. Transported by boat from Sri Lanka via Calcutta and Rangoon in 1859, the relics included a replica of the Buddha's tooth relic, were attended by Myanmar officials at Maloon, a locality at the border between Upper Myanmar and British Burma on the Irrawaddy River. Then they were paraded with much pomp and ceremony in Sagaing and Ava for 30 days, and later placed in a pavilion built for the occasion at the Shan Kalejion Monastery for 4 days in Amarapura. It is on June 14, 1859, that they finally landed at the jetty of the royal barges in Mandalay. Shortly after landing there, the relics were held reverently by two eminent Sayadaw, the Sanjiang Sayadaw and the Latwe Sayadaw. Then they were enshrined in a ceremonial pavilion built on the ground of the royal palace, where Mindon worshipped them. After leaving the palace compound, the relics were brought to the Mandala Ramapie monastery, a monastery located at the foot of Mandalay Hill on its western side. More than 2 years later, after landing at Mandalay on March 15, 1862, the Truth Relic ultimately reached, amidst grand celebrations, the place where it was enshrined, the Mahalokamarazain pagoda in Mandalay. A Bodhi tree, a relic of use, also brought from Sri Lanka, along with other relics to the new capital, reached also its final destination in a compound located in the southern side of Mandalay's outer city. There, land was demarcated on March 15, 1862, for planting the Bodhi tree. The ceremony was followed by the construction of a three-tiered circular platform, 2 enclosures and rest houses, as well as the digging of 8 water tanks around. The whole compound assumes the name of the Mahabodhi Pagoda. Finally, the simile of the Buddha's Sabapana came to be completely fulfilled when the engraving of the entire corpus of the Tipitaka was undertaken under the king's patronage. At a time when non-Buddhist beliefs were spreading in the Buddhist world, and some Buddhist commentarial texts had predicted a decline of the Dharana due to the loss of pariyati, knowledge of the Buddhist scriptures, the engraving of stone inscriptions made by the Buddha Dhammakaya, the corpus of his teachings, permanently made available for the remaining duration of the Dharana. On October 14, 1860, the engraving of the Tipitaka on marble stone slabs started under the supervision of 4 venerable monks, among them the head of the Sangha, 30 senior monks acting as senior editors, 50 monks as editor, and another 50 monks as sub-editor assisted them. The engraving of the 729 stone slabs was eventually completed almost 8 years later, on May 4, 1868. Placed in hollowed brick structures, the marble slabs were erected within 2 enclosures centered on the large stupa where the 2 relics had been enshrined. A small hollow temple located by the eastern side of the central stupa had also a stone inscription entitled Mahalokamarazain, but the inscription is no longer legible due to the successive renovations. Although they no longer stand, 36 rest houses made of bricks and had been built along the 4 sides of the outer enclosure of the pagoda, probably as an incentive for all Buddhist pilgrims to direct their devotion at the pagoda. Where did the Blessed One Sabapana materialize? Before answering this question, it is important to briefly consider how Mandalay was planned. The map shown here has 3 distinctive areas corresponding to different statuses. First, the smallest is the Nanmyodo, the palatial city, where the royal palace, the Luto, and other administrative buildings were located. The larger area around the palatial city is the Shwemyodo, or Golden Royal City, where all court officials and military lived. Lastly is the largest area in light red, the Leyin Myodo, or the other city expanding in the 4 cardinal directions. Having briefly given the extent of the territories of Mandalay, it is important to address matters pertaining to the location of the old merchandises set up by the Buddha. Let's start with the 2 relics enshrinement. As pointed out by Strong, the location selected by kings in Buddhist India and Sri Lanka for enshrining the Buddha's relics directly reflected their conception of the Buddhist polity. In Burma too, the location for enshrining the 2 relic was a crucial matter. Would the relic have to be made to rest at the 2 relic tower within the grounds of the royal palace, or would it have to be enshrined at a pagoda outside the royal palace? At the time of Mandalay's founding, this is the later option which was chosen. Mindon's reading of the Manan Mahayasawinji would have been quite influential on his decision. After holding it reverently at the royal complex, Mindon had it transported to a pagoda outside the royal city, in other words, behind the brick ramparts where it was enshrined. In this, the king followed a point specifically addressed in the Manan Mahayasawinji. Here follows a quote from the text available in English from the Glass Palace Chronicle, translated by Professor Pemangtin. Shin Arahan, quote, spake on this wise to the king, far better will it be to build a city where all beings may worship during the full 5,000 years of the religion than to keep the holy tooth within the palace and worship it there. So, Anoya Taminso, for the benefit of all beings, set the holy tooth in a jeweled piatat on a jeweled white elephant and set it free. Kneel, saying, kneel wheresoever it be pleased to rest. And the white elephant ascended and knelt at the Shwezigon where the frontlet relic was enshrined. So Anoya Taminso enshrines the holy tooth in Shwezigon, end of quote. It is made clear here that the tooth relic ought to be worshipped by all Buddhists and therefore be enshrined in a pagoda outside the royal palace. With the tooth relic enshrined at the Shwezigon, we have a bodily relic and a sacred mound erected over it, matching two of the merchandises set up by the Buddha. With regards to the relic of use, the Bodhi tree, the site of its planting was chosen to the south of the royal city. According to the Kobangset Mahayasawindoji, the site of the compound, situated south of the royal palace, was not chosen at random. It represented a location deemed auspicious and determined by court Brahmins based on calculations of Mindon's horoscope. Just like the 3 astrological wooden posts planted around the royal palace, the Bodhi tree came to serve a similar function, that of a protective role against malevolent forces. A relic of use, symbolic of the Buddha in absentia, the Bodhi tree had become, in this circumstance, a device against evil forces, further illustrating the fluctuating boundaries in Myanmar belief system. The last merchandise set up by the Buddha was the jewel of the order, the Buddhist, the Sangha, to whom Mindon had donated the 18 monasteries earlier mentioned. I show here on a sketch map the all the manner of merchandise set up by the Buddha. In locating the Buddha Sabapana in the outer city of Mandalay, Mindon and his court effectively made all merchandises set up by the Buddha accessible to the entire lay community and not simply to the elite residing within the royal city of Mandalay. How do I support the claim that the Buddha Sabapana offered a textual basis for creating the sacred landscape of Mandalay's outer city? Most of Mindon's grand initiatives and decisions during the founding of Mandalay were described in royal records through magical and supramundane dimensions. Dreams, visions, and experiences triggered by celestial forces were accounted by the king himself and passed into the literature so as to justify the implementation of his grand schemes. The purpose of such royal rhetoric was to portray the ruler above the realities of human condition along the lines of Asoka or a bodhisattva. This resulted in a deliberate omission of any references to Buddhist texts that would have possibly inspired the throne decisions. However, when examining how the throne turns the site into an auspicious sanctuary, various examples illustrated the ways in which Buddhist texts and references were given tangible manifestation in the sacred landscape of Mandalay. These Buddhist texts and references were creatively used by the court officers and monks as model for actions, and I'm going to give you 2 examples here. In order to protect the royal city, the court authorities drew inspiration from the Atanatiya Parita, one of the sutta from the Dialogue of the Buddha, the Digha Nikaya. In this text, yaka are prominently featured. In Mandalay, they were turned into anthropomorphic figures, which you can see on the map here, again from the Yangon University Central Library, located at the 4 corners of the map. So no reference to the Parita, however, was made in Myanmar historical sources. Yet, the Parita was used by the throne as a model for actions. In this case, the main figures of the Parita were given tangible form because the context in which they were made manifest parallels the narrative of the Parita. Another example used as a model for action was a reference to Mingaraya as a metonymy for the notion of sanctuary. The reference was engraved on stone pillars that demarcated the physical limits of Mandalay sanctuary. One section of the inscriptions likens the creation of Mandalay as a sanctuary like Mingaraya, where the Buddha gave his first sermon. Here, I want to emphasize that it's one thing to find Buddhist references in court literature or court monks' writing, and quite another to find them engraved on stone pillars like the one here in the Mandalay area, which defines the limit of a sanctuary established by Mindon. In the former case, these writings reach only a limited audience, mostly members of the Sangha. In the later case, when engraved on such pillars which delineated this sanctuary, this reference could be seen by anyone entering or leaving the area. It was one way for Mindon and his court to at once associate his royal center to a prominent site of Buddhist India and distinguish the Mandalay area from the surroundings by elevating the area to its sacred character. The throne's high reliance, acknowledged or not, on Buddhist texts considered here as model for action. The location in the other city of all merchandise is set up by the Buddha, a location that made all of them effectively accessible to the entire lay community and not simply to the elite. All this substantiates the argument that the message of the Blessed One's Bazaar, found in the Milinda Panya and earlier quoted from Strong's work, inspired Mindon and his entourage to devise their own scheme to Mandalay's outer city. Materializing the bazaar illustrated the throne's creative use of Buddhist texts considered as model for actions, while lay and monastic engagement with the Buddha and his teachings reflecting the throne's pursuit to provide spiritual welfare in addition to the material support given to the population. How was the Blessed One Sabapana made tangible, and where did this Blessed One Sabapana materialize? What does the answer to these two questions tell us about the motives of Mindon and his court literati and the creative way Buddhist knowledge was used in Kombang time? The creative use of authoritative text attests to a deep understanding by court literati of the text here considered. Court literati did not simply know the text, they also understood their meaning and symbolism and could find creative ways to bring the message of this text to a contemporary audience. Location of these references in the other city of Mandalay attests to effort made at the highest level towards wider engagement and dissemination of Buddhist principles among the wider lay population. So what does this mean to us now in the 21st century? So I think it's like, most respected Saido have mentioned, and like Pierre has also mentioned, I think knowledge, Bahutuda, is very important, and acquisition of knowledge at Tipinya is also crucial. But even more crucial, I think, is the need to understand and comprehend the realities that surrounds us. In this 21st century, engagement is to promote not simply an increase of knowledge, but an increase in understanding and an increase in comprehension and realization. So Nalemu and Tabo Baujin. Ultimately, what higher education in Myanmar and elsewhere how to strive for is to teach students the tools for producing new knowledge based on a deep understanding of what surrounds us. While court literati during Mindon's time were keen to share a large corpus of knowledge, they were not so much concerned about providing lay communities with the tool necessary to reach a deep understanding of this corpus. This latter point is what makes the examinations of the Blessed Sabapana important for our present purpose. Today, duties for university faculty in Myanmar and elsewhere are not simply to share current knowledge. Duties should also include the teaching of tools that will help students reach a deeper understanding of the knowledge they gain from their university teachers. And I think the teaching of these tools implies, again, like the most respected Saido were mentioning yesterday, the teaching of these tools implies participatory learning and research, whereby students learn how to read a text, analyze a text, compare a text with other texts addressing the same issues, discuss one's text analysis with that of other students. And I would also mention other tools which include the teaching of research methods related to humanities and social sciences, showing educational movies, develop group research projects, and of course, undertake field research. So that's what, I mean, at the Institute we have been trying to develop. And I just want to conclude and talk about a multidisciplinary project we conducted in the village of Ponlong in Chiaomei Township in northern Shan State. And the goal of the project was to document Shan Buddhist heritage and to shift the focus away a bit from Myanmar Buddhism and then to get interested into Shan Buddhism, especially during the colonial time. And we had, the nice company of faculty members from the anthropology and history department at Mandalay and Yadanabon universities, as well as those from TUM, Technological University in Mandalay. And the whole purpose was to have students from the Mandalay and Sagaing region, from Shan, Kachin State, as well as Thai students from Silpakorn University in Bangkok, who came with us in the field at 3,000 feet high in the mountains to conduct this documentation. So here I'm showing a picture of the whole team. Some being involved into cataloging the manuscripts and others documenting the architecture of the monastery. So the purpose of the project was to catalog and digitize the manuscript held at the Ponlong Monastery. It was to document the monastic architecture, to digitize the paraphernalia preserved there, and also to conduct some archival research focusing on Buddhism and its historical development, the Thibaut area during the colonial period. So it was a multi-pronged research, so it's been very interesting. Here I show again the team with lecturers from Mandalay University being involved in the cataloging and filling in the manuscript cataloging forms. I'm also showing students taking measurements of the monastery building for preliminary documentation. Here are some sketches, done on site by some of the students, which they later on turn into computer edit drawings. So we have here a quite typical Shan monastery with one of the elevations drawn on the computer. Here is another elevation, is another drawing. And here, another side of the project was to digitize the manuscript and to there are about 100 manuscripts in the monastery, and most of them are in Tai Lung. And so they have been digitized and put onto a digital archive, and I'm showing here. So we hope this can be a tool for researchers here in Myanmar and elsewhere, of course, in the US or Japan or Europe. And of course, we want to make a point that all these manuscripts were put back in order at the monastery. We only took pictures, and we hope the Hubazin has taken care of all of them after we departed. We're going to give back the database to the monastery, Gobaga, and they will have, a record of our research. Here is a truncated image of the manuscript form, which explain, which show how the manuscripts are digitized and the contents that they have, whether it's a multi-content manuscript or it's one text only manuscript. We are also showing some of the Buddhist paraphernalia which are preserved there, like so Shin Tiwali is here. That's a picture of the group at the end of the field work, and so we are planning an exhibition in 2021 at the Doe Library at UC Berkeley, also at the Center for Burma Studies at NIU, Silpakorn University, of course, because we some of our partners were coming from there, in Yangon, Mandalay, and the Shan State, and I'd be very pleased to hand in all our data to people, at SSBU, people at Thibault and Chiome, who have been so supportive of the project. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Francois Tanturier, for this wonderful research and a lot of thought-provoking ideas. အခုနောက်ဆုံးစာတမ်းရှင်ပြင်သစ်နိုင်ငံသား Dr. Francois Tanturier ဒီ Indian Institute ကပြောသွားတာတော့မင်းတို့မင်းကမန်းလေးကိုတည်တဲ့နေရာမှာ architect တွေကဘိတုခါတွေကမန်းလေးကို design ဆွဲတဲ့နေရာမှာအများကြီးပြောသွားပေမဲ့တခုအဓိကပြောသွားတဲ့ဟာတော့သဗ္ဗပနဆိုတာဖျားစေးပေါ့အဲ့ဒီဖျားစေးကိုမြို့ထဲမှာမထားဘဲနဲ့မြို့အပြင်မှာလူတွေဝင်ထွက်သွားလာနိုင်အောင်အဲ့လိုနေရာမှာထားတယ်ဆိုတဲ့တောင်ဒါကတော့ပိတုခါအနေနဲ့ဆိုရင်တော့ဘယ်ဟာကိုဘယ်နေရာမှာထားမယ်ဆိုဒီဇိုင်းဆွဲတဲ့အခါမှာသူတို့တွေးရတဲ့အတွေးတွေအဲ့ဒီအတွေးကိုထားကမိလင်တပညာပါအဲ့ဒါမှာပါတဲ့ဟာတာမန်လူတွေမသိတဲ့ဟာအတန်းကြောင်းထဲမှာလည်းမသိတဲ့ဟာစာတတ်ဆရာတော်ပဲသိတယ်အဲ့ဒါဘယ်လိုလုပ်ပြီးတော့လူတွေသိနိုင်တော့ဆိုအဓိကတော့နန်းတွင်ပညာရှိတွေကသိလို့တဲ့နန်းတွင်ပညာရှိတွေကအဲ့ဒါစာလည်းသိတယ်နောက်ပြီးတော့လက်တွေ့လည်းသိတယ်ပေါ့အဲ့ဒီအကြောင်းကိုအဲ့ဒီဟာကိုယူပြီးတော့သူကတော့အသေးစိတ်ရှင်းပြသွားတယ်အဲ့ဒီဟာကိုယူပြီးတော့အခုလက်ရှိမြန်မာနိုင်ငံပညာရေးအနေနဲ့ဆိုရင်တခုကတော့ဘုဒ္ဓနောက်တစ်ခုကတော့အသိပညာဆိုတာလက်တွေ့ပညာပေါ့ဘုဒ္ဓကတော့ theory အနောက်အသိပညာကလက်တွေ့ပါတဲ့ဟာအဲ့ဒီနှစ်ခုကိုပေါင်းစပ်ဖို့လိုအပ်တယ်ဆိုတဲ့အကြောင်းသူကိုယ်တိုင်ကျောင်းဆက်ပေါင်းလောင်း area နဲ့နောက်ပြီးတော့ရှမ်းပြည်နယ်ကျောင်းမဲနဲ့ဒီပေါ်မှာရှိတဲ့ဘုန်းကြီးကျောင်းတွေဒီဇိုင်းတွေနောက်ပြီးတော့ပရပိုက်စာပေတွေအဲ့ဒါတွေကိုကျောင်းသားတွေထိုင်းနိုင်ငံကယဉ်ကျေးမှုတက္ကသိုလ်စေဘာဝန်တက္ကသိုလ်ကျောင်းသားတွေနဲ့နောက်မန္တလေးနည်းပညာတက္ကသိုလ်ကျောင်းသားတွေနဲ့ပူးပေါင်းပြီးတော့project တခုလုပ်နေတယ်ဆိုတဲ့အကြောင်းအဲ့ဒီ project ကိုနောက်နှစ်2021ခုနှစ်မှာ American နိုင်ငံ University of California Berkeley မှာပြပွဲလုပ်ဖို့အတွက်ရှိတယ်ဆိုတဲ့အကြောင်းအချင်းလေးတင်ပြပါတယ်အခုမေခွန်းနဲ့အမေးဖြေမယူခင်မှာမလုပ်ခင်မှာဖုန်းတို့ break ရှင်းမယ် break မလုပ်ခင်မှာလက်ဆောင်ပစ္စည်းတွေပေးအပ်တာတွေရှိမယ်တဲ့အဲ့ဒါလေးစီစဉ်ပေးပါ so before we have a break After the break, we will have questions and answers, just like yesterday. But before the break, there will be some souvenir presentations. So I pass the floor to the MCs.
Thank you so much to our chairs and paper presenter. Now is the time to present the gifts to the speakers for sharing your knowledge in this panel. On behalf of SSBU, may I respectfully invite the most venerable Oxford Sayadaw, Professor Dr. Kemai Dhammasami, founder and rector of Shan State Buddhist University, to present the souvenir to presenters. May I invite the presenter, Dr. Elish Rivik Falkesh, to accept the gift. Now, may I invite the presenter, Dr. Dorpi Pyocho, to accept the gifts. Now, may I invite the presenter, Dr. Francois Torin, to accept the gift. Thank you, the most venerable.
Now, may I kindly invite Uso Ten, Vice Chairman of Max Myanmar Holding Company Limited, to present gifts to presenters. May I invite Dr. Elish Ruiz Facres to receive the gift. May I invite Dr. Dorpi Pyocho to receive the gift. May I invite Dr. Francois Tonias to receive the gifts. Thank you so much, sir. We appreciate the chairpersons for their efficient moderating the session and our distinguished audience for your kind attention and interest. Should you have any queries regarding these presentations, you can raise them at the Q&A session after the break. After Q&A session, we have the program to present certificates to donors and volunteers of our conference. And also, we have some special programs for the volunteers. So all volunteers, please stay till the program is completed. And now the donors and our volunteers are ready to serve our esteemed audience with refreshment, soft drinks, coffee, and pastry. May I warmly invite our distinguished audience to kindly proceed to the chamber room for the refreshments. For venerable members of the Sangha, the soft drinks are available at the walkways up there. For venerable nuns are requested to remain seated in your place. For the other participants, please proceed to the lawn outside the Convocation Hall to enjoy refreshments and take a short break. Our volunteers are ready to assist you at registration areas.
အပရိသတ်များရှင်ကော်ဖီနဲ့မုန့်များကိုခမ်းမရဲ့အပြင်ဘက်မှာစီစဉ်ပေးထားပါတယ်ရှင်ခမ်းမရဲ့အပြင်ဘက်မှာသုံးဆောင်ပေးပါရနှင့်ခမ်းမအတွင်းကိုယူဆောင်လာခြင်းမပြုပါရန်မြစ်တာရက်ခံအပ်ပါတယ်ရှင်
ဆရာလေးဆရာကြီးNow it's time for group photos. May I kindly invite most venerables and distinguished guests to take a photo.